But there are certainly things you can do that help it, that I could do more of, for sure. But then it's the whole, if you go back to a coaching philosophy, when I say yes to that, what am I saying no to? And, if I say yes to blue light glasses and red things, I'll be saying no to something else in the way that I live my life at the moment.
Welcome to the Mindful Paths podcast with Nick Day and Hari Kalymnios, where we explore the fascinating worlds of mindset, mindfulness, fitness, well-being, vitality, leadership, and personal development.
Our goal is to provide you with the insights to help you live a more fulfilling, happier, and healthier life.
If you're striving to be a better parent, friend, leader, colleague, or boss, or if you simply want to be more mindful and aware of the world around you, then this Mindful Paths podcast is for you.
We invite you all to eavesdrop on our conversations, and we challenge you to discover a new insight to help you on your own journey towards personal growth and positive change.
So sit back,
relax, and let's begin our journey together
on the Mindful Paths podcast.
Hi, how you doing, mate? You're out in Estonia, enjoying a Mindvalley University conference, I understand. How are things going? I got your video earlier of everyone dancing madly in a room, enjoying themselves. How is it out there?
That was just before the final session. Of Paul McKenna. So Paul McKenna, the hypnotist, who people might know from the 80s and 90s, he used to have a show on TV. But I've seen him a few times actually. But he was doing a whole day thing, so I was there with that. It's really the first day. I mean, yesterday was just an intro day, and I've been here since Saturday. I haven't done a huge amount of partying. There was a little social last night, but that was done by 10:30, and then my apartment that I'm in is only a 5-minute walk, which is great. But what's even better is it's right by the sea. So I've gone in the sea the last 3 mornings, and I make that a habit up until probably the 15th. So then I have to move apartment, which is going to be further away from the sea.
I live by the sea, and I never ever go. Well, I don't take that opportunity. It's one of those things. It's on your doorstep. You don't do it when you go somewhere. It's not used to it.
It has to be really on your doorstep, though. That's the thing. Because I think, as you know, I'm thinking of moving to Brighton, but my criteria is I need to be within 10-minute walk of the beach or 4-minute cycle. Because if it's more than that, because I think you're more than that, aren't you? You're more than that.
Well, more than a 10-minute walk. Yeah, I'm probably a 10-minute cycle.
Yeah, so it's just that little bit.
Half-hour walk.
Yeah, it's that little bit extra resistance. That's the problem. So I really needed this swim this morning because for whatever reason, I'm all about my sleep. I couldn't sleep last night. So we finished at like 10:30, came back here. My mate's staying with me for a bit until he sorts himself out. And I don't know whether it was excitement or whether the fact I'd promised people at 8:30 swim in the morning or the hot cotton sheets or whatever. But I couldn't sleep. And my Oura ring this morning it wasn't too bad. It said I was readiness 70, which actually is not too bad, but normally I'm in the high 80s. I'm feeling quite tired. I tried to come back at lunchtime because we have a 2-hour lunch break for a nap, but I had some work to do, so I didn't have any time. So maybe sleep's a good conversation to have. And I was just having a conversation with someone about that.
Well, if you're talking about sleep, interestingly, it is. So I've just had a note literally popped through on my phone about, 5 hours ago from my chemist saying that my prescription's in. So as you know, I'm on prescription drugs for insomnia. I've been on insomnia for, I don't know, 30 years. Long time now. But I don't really suffer days. It's weird. I used to suffer really badly. So chronic insomnia, I can go 4 or 5 days. I remember being sent home from work where I just hadn't slept for several days in a row. And my language, my thinking was straight, but I wasn't talking straight. It wasn't connecting with my brain. I remember my boss at the time just sending me home and going, you just need to get home. Like, you're talking gobbledygook. So it was worse. It's been in worse days than it is now. But interestingly, when I run out of my medication, it comes back. It's like a psychological thing here that, I haven't got any in the house now, and if I bring it with me, I don't tend to suffer. It's kind of like a comfort blanket. I know it's there, so I don't need it. Occasionally I'll need it, but often I won't. If I run out, that's when my brain goes into like hyperactive mode and I can't sleep. So I'm feeling a bit tired because I ran out of medication about 3 days ago. Sleep's been disrupted as a result, but I now know it's at the chemist. I can go and pick it up. I take Zolpidem, which is a very highly prescripted drug for insomnia. I would argue, having tried most of them, for those that do have the unfortunate circumstance of being prescribed drugs to sort the problem, that it's the best one out there by some margin. I think over 5 million people have it in the US. There's loads and loads of different ones, but for me, Zolpidem is the one that's always helped me out. But it's a prescription sleeping pill.
Yeah, I mean, like lack of sleep. I mean, for me, my sleep being lacking last night is probably what you would get on a really good night. I guess I had 6.25 hours or 6.5 hours in bed.
That's a good night.
5 hours, 55 minutes of sleep.
Okay.
Now, for me, for listeners, I would normally want 8.25 hours in bed to get a good 7.5 hours of actual sleep time. And I would normally run at about an hour and a half deep sleep. And I think I got 54 minutes last night. So I really notice it if things are, deep sleep is up, but the total sleep is down. But if everything's down, then I really notice it. Not too bad, but what I have to do and be mindful of, which is why I don't want to do anything tonight, is, if I do that 2, 3, 4 days on the trot, I'm going to be more susceptible. And we'll talk about the things that sleep do, which you'll be aware of. But one of the big ones, which is why I was really annoyed that nothing was like this mentioned over the last 3 years, but something that affects your immune system more than anything is your sleep. And if you don't get sleep, your immune system is going to be out of whack. And so I have to manage my energy over the period, which is why I've chosen to get an apartment by myself as opposed to sharing, so that I can have a little bit more comfort when I sleep, and also an apartment 5 minutes away from the conference, so that I can go back and have a little nap if I need to. And like today, I just came back and had dinner. And so I don't feel like I'm forced to go out and be out all day with people, because it can get really exhausting. And I know that sleep is going to suffer this next 3 weeks. That's a given. But as we were talking about on episode 6, I think when I explained my beat model, sometimes you focus on one area, which in my case, this next 3 weeks is all about connection. Other areas might come out of balance, but I try to make them not so out of balance. So for example, the sleep, I'm trying to manage. Food, you can probably see I bought my Vitamix in the corner there. Standard. So I'm trying to, and obviously I've got willing customers here wanting to have that. So my mate is enjoying my smoothies and we made a stir fry tonight, lots of vegetables. So I try and do the best I can, because there'll be times where I'm going to sacrifice things. And so it's all about balance when it comes to the beat model. It's all about and being more aware. And I think that's a big thing with the sleep, actually, which I want to talk about maybe.
I think, to be honest, you talked in the past about your social connection being the one area that often gets you. I think the bit that gets me, if I was to follow your beat model, would probably be sleep. So I'm fully aware of the importance of it, right? I would argue I don't feel like I need it as much as others. And there's a bit of a myth that we all need exactly 8 hours. We're all different people, and we do adapt. So, you said, it's not, the amount of sleep you had is probably normal for me, and that's correct. But our bodies are very, very good at adapting to circumstance anyway. So I would argue that the impact on you would probably be greater in terms of how it would impact you in 1 day of 6 hours to me, because I live on it. So
for you, if you were at this Mindvalley University thing, you'd have a ball, because you wouldn't feel any different necessarily, because you'd be you'd probably be going to bed a bit later, I guess, because I think my average bedtime, if I look at my Oura ring over the last few times I've done this, is around sort of 1:30 or 2 a.m. But that means some nights I'm doing 12 and some nights I'm doing 4 or 5 or 6. So if you were going to bed on average, say 2 a.m., which should probably be, it doesn't ever get dark here. That's the other thing. Midnight, it's still light, and then it starts to get light again. So there'll be kids out till midnight easily.
Yeah. So
you go to bed at say 2, let's say, getting up at, I guess, 8. So that might be your, because the sessions start at 10. So if you want to work out and all that, you get up at 8. So that'll probably be your normal day. So you'd actually probably find it fine. Now, I can cope, no problem. However, I say no problem. The challenge is, and this is where I'm going to push back on you a little bit about, firstly, not everyone needs 8 hours, but most people, I'd say 99.999% of people do need between 7 and 9 in general. If you're particularly an athlete and you need more recovery, like Roger Federer, who sleeps sometimes 12 hours a day during the tennis season, that's one thing. Or if you're ill for some reason, because the healing comes when you're sleeping, then you might sleep longer. If you have a specific gene, of which less than 1 in 12,000 people have, then you can thrive on less than, say, 7 or 8 hours, 7 or 6 hours. However, those people that think they can function well on, say, 6 hours, I would almost guarantee it's not. It's just because they're used to it. They don't ever know what amazing feels like, because you can see it. You can see it in the face, right? You can see.
You can see the bags under my eyes. That's a bit of a family trait as well. So I can't just call that one.
Yeah, it might be. What I would say is I always used to have dark circles under my eyes, interestingly enough, and I just thought that was me, right? And I remember once my friend Trevor, he commented that how they'd gone, and and it wasn't to do with sleep. This was to do with my diet. When I changed my diet, suddenly that all changed. So I don't know. I mean, family trait or not.
It's one of those things, right? And I could push back as well because it's something I've had for a long time. And there probably isn't a right or wrong answer. I think I have this with my wife. My wife touches the pillow, she's gone. She can sleep anywhere, and she's asleep with it. I don't know how anyone goes to sleep that fast because we're all different. There's sleep latency. There's how long it takes you to get to sleep. Some people are frequent, go to sleep really easy, but they wake frequently. I'm not one of those. When I'm asleep till the morning. My issue is getting to sleep, and traditionally it'll take me quite a long time to drop off. And when my insomnia kicks in, I just don't drop off. So it can go on for hours and hours. In the end, I give up and go somewhere else. However, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I just think there's a bit of an unknown ambiguity here about, some of us claim that we don't need it. I'm not saying I'm not claiming it, but I don't think I need as much as you. And actually, someone who sleeps well and treasures their sleep will always have that argument more than someone that doesn't. So we're coming from totally different angles of it. What I will say is about every quarter, I'm obviously sleep deprived to a level because my body will try and catch up. And I have 3 or 4 days where I'm just knackered and I'll go to bed early. And early for me would be around 10 o'clock. I know some people go to bed earlier than that. That would be super early. And I might be down for 3 nights in a row and I feel amazing. I feel good. And then I can't sustain it. My body won't actually cause the insomnia. So one of the quickest ways for me not to sleep would be to try and take an early night. If I say to my wife, and sometimes I feel like I need it, I'll go to bed and go, I need an early night. And I'll lie there. And it's almost like my insomnia, my psychological system kicks in and goes, you've gone to bed early. This ain't going to work. And I'll end up having less sleep because I can't drop off at all. So it is a bit like a torture. So I think a lot of it, when we hear this, it's great, but it's not so solvable. As in, it's like, I don't necessarily disagree. I'd feel better if I had 8 hours of night, but it ain't going to happen.
I come from a point of view that everything's solvable. That's just a belief, right? And that's a belief that helps me then approach things in a certain way, because if I believe it's solvable, then I'm going to keep working until there's a solution, right? You talked about not being able to get to bed very quickly.
Not being able to get to sleep quickly.
Not being able to get to sleep very quickly. So for me,
latency period for me.
Yeah, so my sleep latency used to be, and always, all my life, up until about 12 years ago, was about 45 minutes to an hour. Now, I thought that was normal. To take about 45 minutes from getting into bed. And bear in mind, when I get into bed, I don't have a TV in my room. I don't have my laptop there. I don't have my phone there. So I'm not reading a book. I'm just lying there. And it wasn't until I started studying sleep that I started to making other changes. So I'll tell you the things that made the biggest difference for me. Now, I'm not here to cure your insomnia.
I know, I've probably tried them. I mean, I'm not one of these people that's trying to reject it. I welcome something that works. I've just tried a lot of them.
Is about now 45 seconds or a minute. It's a little bit longer now because I've stopped doing something that I was doing that made it easier, which I'll tell her. But one thing that
keep it clean.
Yeah, no, it's not that. What I also noticed as well is I'm actually opposite to you in terms of when I do fall asleep, I'm quite a light sleeper. So, I'll wake up. Often I might wake up for the loo, especially if I've drunk water in the hour and a half before bed. If I don't drink for an hour and a half before I go to bed, I tend not to wake up so much unless there's a blood sugar thing going on, which is why a lot of people do wake up, because it's about 8 hours after their last meal when they have 3 o'clock wake up, and that's your body trying to find food. But aside from that, one of the things I noticed is when I changed my diet, things became easier. But the big thing that worked for me in terms of latency was, which I'm not doing tonight, which is the low level lights, the blue light blocking glasses, and then the meditation. Because if I meditate just before bed, technically I'm in bed for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And I'm doing that breathing thing so that when I then lie down and my head hits the pillow, that's when I have that 45 seconds. The last year or so, for whatever reason, I've just got out of the habit of meditating before going to bed. I do it in the morning, and then my latency's increased, not by much, but still.
That's interesting. 5 minutes. I'd probably need other insomniacs on. I've never studied anyone. I only know my own level of insomnia and what I've been through, so I don't know how other people suffer. But interestingly, with meditation, so I've experimented with meditation, as you know, not to your level. I'm a big believer in trying to, improve my well-being, and I'd love to be able to master meditation better, and I'm working on it. It's continual progress. But even then, I've got different gadgets, which we talked about in our last episode, that'll try and help me relax and whatever that is. But if I start drifting, let's say I start falling asleep on the sofa in front of Netflix or whatever, or I start meditating, it's almost like my brain has a signal that when I move to go to bed because I'm tired, I wake up.
Yeah.
I feel like even if it's only a 10 minutes meditation or 10 minutes sleep on the sofa, I get really annoyed. If I wake up, then it's almost like my body thinks it's the morning, and I then can't get to sleep for love or money. I kind of have to stay where I am. I daren't move if I've fallen asleep because I wake up.
Meditation on your pillow in your bed. So in my morning meditation, I never do in my bedroom. I always do that in the gym.
So there's a challenge there even with that, and I've tried this. That's probably actually when and again, I'm not trying to be just my own experience, because I've tried most things. And meditation in bed is one thing I've tried a lot. I've also tried it along with sleep music, which is hit and miss for me, but the idea of sleep music has if you get the really technical sleep music, and there's stuff out there that mimics your brain waves. There's no formulaic pattern, so your brain, all those things. And I've done the breathing exercises. I followed the Navy SEALs formula for those that are in difficult situations and you can't sleep. So there's a process they go through to get sleep. I think for me, every time I try something like that and tell myself I'm doing it for the reason of sleep, my brain switches on and goes, we're talking sleep. And as soon as we start talking sleep, I'm in that cycle that says I'm not going to sleep. I almost have to go to bed not thinking that I'm going to, without the thought of sleep entering my head at any point, and I'll drift off way easier.
Can I interrupt? Do you have good dreams? Do you have dreams?
I'm a very lucid dreamer. Yeah, I dream a lot, and they're very lucid. I had two very weird dreams last night, which I'll mention in a minute if you want to read into them. Yeah, but one of them, which is slightly disconcerting.
Well, the reason I mentioned that is because recently I think we've talked about reframing on a previous episode.
Yeah.
And I sometimes stay up recently a bit too late, like watching the Netflix or whatever. And then I've reframed it as that actually the best movies that I tend to have or watch are the ones I'm in my dreams. I love my dreams a lot of the time in these good movies. And so I've tried to reframe it to say, actually, I'm going to the movies, or I'm going to so by going to bed, I'm kind of going to the movies, as it were, but I'm going to a really interactive movie and I kind of look forward to it sometimes. So I'm just wondering whether there's a reframe there, or whether so rather than you're going to bed, you're going to renew your cells, or you're going to...
It's one of those things where I'm probably scared to try, because typically that will trigger my insomnia to think about sleep. So I try not to. However, and you mentioned it earlier, the reframing piece is interesting. So I will reframe all the time. So the way that I'll tend to get to sleep if I'm struggling is, rather than, as most people who don't suffer from insomnia and have that odd night and they can't sleep and they know it's going to ruin the next day, and they get and actually stress is the biggest cause of prolonging the issue, that's the best time to reframe. So I'll say to my wife, if she ever has a very, very rare time when she can't sleep, we'll be like, look, it's just one night. It's just one night. Reframe it. Your world is not over. It's just one night. And if it happens the second night, it's just 2 nights. And I'll reframe that way. It's when it gets to 4 or 5, it start going, now it's harder to reframe it. But the first night, for anyone that suffers this for the first time, and I remember when I started to suffer, and I know why as well. So there's a few things that triggered it. And I overcame the stresses that caused it then. The stress disappears, as time always does. But the insomnia stayed with me and has done ever since. So I know for me it's psychological. I know that. And I've tried cognitive behavioral therapy. I've been in Harley Street. They've analysed me, and I'll talk about something I think is absolutely fascinating. And I don't know if you know about paradoxical insomnia. And that's what I want to. I'll talk about it because I think it's really interesting. But I've mentioned it because it links to dreaming. But I went to Harley Street to see if there's something that I was suffering from, because I don't think I need as much sleep as other people. Maybe I have that gene you're talking about.
Technically, more chance of being hit by lightning than having that gene, but yeah.
Like you said, 1 in 12,000, right? So there's how many billion people in the world?
Yeah, that's true. It's possible.
I was assessed at Harley Street years ago. It would have been when I was in my previous employer. So we're talking 25 years ago, probably. And it was a really fascinating experience. And they gave me some interesting tools and sleep wave music and things to take away with, and all those kind of bits and pieces. Well, something I want to talk about. I can bring it up now. So paradoxical insomnia is, for a lot of people that think they suffer from insomnia, which is what I thought may have been happening to me, don't suffer at all. They dream that they have it. And I think that's mad. So they will say, and I'll swear blind to you, that they have been awake all night. I've only had half an hour sleep, but the brain sleep wave patterns tell you something else. And they wake up, they have micro wake ups, which makes them think they've been continuously awake. But you don't remember them. Or they are fully dreaming lucidly that they're in the space they're in. They know the space inside and out, as we do. Like if we were blind, you could probably navigate your bedroom. We know it so well that we dream very lucidly that we are suffering from insomnia when actually we're fast asleep. And when you go to the sleep studies and sleep centers, I never knew this was a thing, right? And I came across it from years and years ago, and ended up so fascinated by whether there's something I was suffering from, because I was so adamant I was awake and I had no one else to verify it. Otherwise, I can get out of bed and do things. You can't do that for 7-8 hours every night. Well, I went to Harley Street at the time and got myself assessed, and I don't suffer, but it's a really interesting thing. 20% of people that will say to you, I haven't slept at all last night, and actually they're a bit fast asleep.
I think that's where I was this morning when I woke up. I was convinced that I'd only had about 2.5 hours sleep, 3 hours sleep.
And your Aura Ring probably told you different.
Exactly.
We've got gadgets now. We didn't have them 25
really
years ago.
I was surprised because it said I had few wake ups. It was only the one wake up I remember going to the loo at some point. And I was like, wow, I slept way more than I thought, even though I thought I was like massively awake the whole night. So it is interesting. But what I was going to say is, the thing is with sleep, and I didn't start. Now I know you know a lot about sleep. Maybe our listeners don't. But because you think, oh, what's the big deal with sleep? Right, we do it naturally, right? So why do we need to study it? Why do we need to learn it? And normally when I sort of teach issues, I teach sleep in terms of the techniques. I always go through the bad things first. I'm not going to do that today necessarily, because I don't want to put anyone who's suffering from insomnia into a straight. But the thing is, sleep does so much more than you can possibly imagine. Right? Every aspect of your life is going to be affected, whether it's the quality of relationships, your immune system, your hormones, your metabolism, your propensity for diabetes or heart disease or injuries if you're a sports person, is affected by your sleep. Your skin, right? Your cognition at work, all of these obvious things. And once I understood that, but then also understood what were the things that were stealing away my sleep, such as the blue light and all this. Now these are fixes, I would say, not for like insomnia, because I think most insomnia, but I'm not an expert, but you've alluded to it a little bit earlier, ultimately might drive from some kind of issue that needs to be dealt with. Like, let's say you're about to lose your house, or you're about to, there's 100%.
That's the biggest cause. It's a short-term stressor. And most people at some point will suffer short-term insomnia, but then they overcome it because the stress goes away. In my incidents, the stress went away and the insomnia stayed.
But then you go into the habit. So also what I would say for you personally, me looking on the outside looking in, is you've created an identity around, I'm an insomniac, as opposed to I'm a person who occasionally has sleep issues or has insomnia occasionally.
I don't know if I do. I think I would say I'll suffer from insomnia. I don't think I necessarily determine myself as an insomniac. I think I said at the start, usually I sleep fine, but if I haven't got there's a psychological element to it, because if I haven't got the medication, my brain switches on and goes, you've run out, you're not going to sleep. I
just feel like there's a certain identity that's associated to it that that maybe one might, not necessarily you, but one might become, because in most cases when I deal with talk to people about some issue, we conflate the issue with the person, and we say, I am this or I am that, as opposed to the person who is transiently affected by this situation. And I have the same thing with other aspects of my life, where I overly identify with a certain way of being, right? As opposed to just noticing that that's the thing that happens. So I think there's an element there. If the stressor has gone, like let's say that the house hasn't been foreclosed on or whatever, then you've got into that habit, and the body and the brain are so interlinked.
I don't know. So I'm going to challenge it a little bit. So my stressors went 30 years ago in this particular incident, and I've had other stressors which have been much more significant that haven't triggered it either. And it's really hard to explain. This is why it's really difficult, because you don't ever want to be disrespectful when someone's giving you advice. Usually you try to be really, really helpful. I've had people say, imagine you're on a boat going down a thing and breathe. And it's like, look, trust me, I've tried these things. They haven't worked for one reason or another. There are things that do work, by the way, and I'm happy to go through what those things are for me. I think it's very individual. But for those that have suffered with genuine insomnia over a long period of time, and I'll relate to this to people that I do know that suffer. My mum is one, and I would argue there probably is a hereditary link here. My mum suffered in very, very similar ways in different things. Or whether it's nurture, I don't know, but there's something in there. It's a feeling. I can almost call it when it happens. I can have this conversation now because that feeling is not apparent, but there's a certain feeling that enters the body. It's a bit like if you suddenly have that moment of stress and you can feel it rising inside you. Yeah. So if my head's on the pillow and that feeling hits me, and it's a feeling like I can't really explain. It's like a hot flush going through your body. it's almost like my brain is switched on to something, and sometimes it comes in, sometimes it doesn't. There are triggers that cause it. One of those might be a running out of medication, and there are other things that could happen. Being somewhere foreign, having a running race the following day, you know, where there's anxiety on top, and you have that, no, I really need to sleep. So if I need to sleep, you can trigger it. But it's a feeling like I can't explain that I've had in any other circle.
Feelings are things that you don't necessarily explain because they're kind of within the body, right? And so what I wanted to say, I don't know if you've tried any of these sorts of things, but I remember it's interesting. There's some techniques within NLP that we do with feelings where you were being so descriptive there because you were saying it's a feeling that comes up, it's a hot flush, you can't explain. We were doing some stuff actually with Paul McKenna today, and so he's one of the speakers here, and he was doing a technique called havening. I don't know if you know havening technique. It's a bit of a weird one. I'm not practiced in it, but you do lots of jiggery pokery with the mind and the body at the same time, and you kind of brush your arms and different aspects of your body. Really interesting. But what I want to say, not to explain these techniques, but there are really interesting techniques that get into that subconscious level where you're talking about that feeling you can't explain. It's got this color, maybe it's got this texture, it's got this movement. And within NLP specifically, because I do know that, there are ways that we can, I don't know about for insomnia because I've never done it with that, but I've certainly done it with other people where we've managed to change what that actual feeling looks and feels like, that the level of, say, insomnia or the issue, let's say, went from a 9 or a 10 down to maybe a 3 or a 2. Because it's like I say, it's a hard thing to explain. I just want to put that out there as a thing to go in the back of your mind. Just as this is why I say everything's solvable, because there may be a technique that you don't know. I know you've tried this Navy SEAL stuff, the CBTI. That you tried CBT.
I've tried CBT. I mean, obviously, we're both trained in NLP, so I haven't necessarily tried it. I think one of the challenges is, and again, not trying to be contrarian, when you really want to sleep is when you're most tired as well, right? So it's very easy for you and I to talk practically about the methods you can try, but when it gets to 4 a.m. in the morning, it's quite hard to concentrate on anything. To get rid of any feeling. It's almost like it hits you at your worst moment because you're not awake.
Last night I was trying the progressive relaxation technique. I think you know that, where you scrunch your toes.
You tense. Yeah, that's actually that is one of the things they recommend to try and help with insomnia and sleeplessness.
Yeah, I've done that with clients. I've done that with a few clients, and it works for them. I would say that 99% out of, now this is not data driven, but just based on my experience. But firstly, again, from the workshops I lead, I would say 70% or more of the people in front of me are sleep deprived. And when I'd agree with that. They get less than the sleep needed. And actually the stats show something similar, if not more. And the average amount of sleep has gone down by an hour and a half in the last 30 or 40 years. But I would also say 99% of people that say they suffer from sleep issues are doing things that are not helping that issue at all.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, I think this relates to the way you live your life is always going to be different to mine, right? So I don't, prevent all blue light entering there are things I could certainly do to improve the situation, I'm sure. We have blue light on. I don't have red glasses on in front of the TV every night with shades with my kids or anything like that, right? I don't want to use the word normal because I don't know what normal is, but I guess a more 2.4 children process.
More common or a more regular lifestyle.
Yeah, right. And I can tell you now, I'm not going to adopt those things. I've got my sleep into I'm definitely sleep deprived, but it's at a level where it's manageable. I think that's the key thing. And yes, there are more things I could do. I love my coffee. I won't drink caffeine after 2:00. That's one of my things. I could probably stop it earlier than that. 2:00.
I just thought I saw you drinking a can of Coke, or was I mistaken? Is that?
I also said, well, yeah, you have here, but that's because there is an exception to the rule today. I will say, and that's because I'm picking up my medication later. And I'm not too worried because tonight I'm knocking myself out. That is happening. Because I'm about 3 days in with that medication, I'm struggling, so I'm kind of going fly by night at the moment. But typically I won't. I'm a big coffee fan, but there are certainly things you can do that help it, that I could do more of for sure. But then it's the whole. If you go back to a coaching philosophy, when I say yes to that, what am I saying no to? And if I say yes to blue light glasses and red things, I'll be saying no to something else in the way that I live my life at the moment. If I say,
what do you think you would be saying no to though? Let's say, and I'm not advocating blue light blocking glasses to everyone or anyone, although I do find them to be very useful. But what would you be saying no to?
What are the things I'd need to do? So you've got specific bulbs in your house. You have no Wi-Fi in your house. You turn off all your Bluetooth anywhere within the sleeping zone. You have certain apps and things across the board. I don't know what these things are, but they're pretty. The amount of changes you make in your life are pretty significant, right down to the ions in your water.
Are you familiar with Flux? The free software product that you just install on any laptop or PC or whatever. It knows where you are geographically because they know everything anyway. You tell it what time you wake up, what time you go to bed, and it will automatically start to strip the blue light out of your screen without you having to do anything. I've installed it years ago. I don't look at it anymore.
So what about the TV?
Well, the TV, for me, I wear my blue light blocking glasses. I don't care that I'm wearing those.
I don't care what the kids think when I'm wearing the glasses. It's not that. I think we just live very, very different lives. You've got so much commitments we have are so different. And the experiences we want to have. I don't want to sit in front of Netflix with a pair of red glasses and everything's red. I don't want to do that. That's what I'm saying no to. I want to watch TV in the colours they were designed to be.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get. But by the way, I would say, just so you know, that I actually have two sets of glasses. One is red, which I don't tend to wear in front of the TV because it does make everything red and it gets confusing. The other ones are more amber, darker amber than the ones you've got there. So you still get some colour. Although what I would say is I remember I was watching TV program with my sister. And my sister is a TV and movie director. I'm not sure if you knew this or not. And she was so annoyed because at the time she was working in front of on her laptop, color grading or working to color grade her show. And I'm like, I'm just
put your glasses on.
I'm gonna watch your show with the color grading you put on. Because for me, if I say yes to watching the TV normally, I'm saying no to quality sleep, right? And for me, that's more important.
Yeah. So I think that's the point, is that I'm not, when you're saying yes to anything, you're saying no to something else. So I'll make some sacrifices and we live our lives differently. And I'll make more than other people and make less than others. I do think there's a difference in the way that we live our lives though. So having two kids at home and running a business and all the other bits and pieces will throw different stresses on my life to the stresses that you have in yours. And we're going to make different choices on the back of that.
I guess my point with all this is that I don't like, so you get on your watt bike every day pretty much for an hour, right? So that's built into your habit, that's built into your routine and everything. So it's not, I imagine, it might be a bit of a motivation or a chore to get on sometimes, but by and large, it might almost be like brushing your teeth, right? You just do it and you don't really think about it too much. For a lot of things I do, yes, there's always a bit of an on-ramp where you have to kind of get familiar with things or change things or whatever. But after a bit, it becomes habitualized or routinized.
I don't disagree with that, but you don't have to compromise in your life either, because I'm living with two kids and a wife, and it's to make that work, and it works very well. We're 15 years married, plus, been together over 20. You know my wife, right? That does come with compromise as well. So some of these choices I can't just make whether I want to make them or not. There are times like yesterday, actually, I didn't do a workout yesterday because work just got too much. And actually, if I asked myself the choice, I would love to have got on my watt bike and done a brick session for about 2 hours. But to do that would have meant that I ended up doing nothing, sat on the sofa, watched TV with my wife because I hadn't seen her all day. That was the compromise, because it would have been rude for me to not spend any time with her to have done that. So I think that's just one example that happened yesterday. But there's compromise that has to be had as well. So again, when you're saying, if I was saying yes to that workout yesterday, I'd have been saying no to spending time with my wife, despite that's probably what I'd prefer to have done for me. But we're a team, so you've got to make those sacrifices. I just think it's different. I never come away from sleep now.
It is.
I just think it
is different. I would say that for me, you don't have to do everything, right? And if I look at, say, some of the big things that I would do, the weirdest one, which is definitely the glasses, because that's a weird thing when you've got people around, right? The lights, for me, not so much of a big deal, because I think swapping out a few light bulbs here and there, I know people that do it, but like magnesium, again, I don't think a massive big deal, because you do that anyway. I think.
I take magnesium.
The caffeine curfew you've already got in place. Morning sunshine, actually, I would recommend to people, because that sets your melatonin off for the day. If you can get that in.
I tend to go for runs, so I usually get that as well. So
exactly.
There's certain things that we do. I mean, the biggest tip I would give, we're going back to sleep, and this will be contrarian to most advice, right? Probably your own. For me, it works better than anything else. And I know it's a bit like the thirst argument, right? So I'm preempting what I think you'll say, and I might be completely wrong. Okay. So apologies.
Okay.
If we talk about water, I don't tend to get thirsty, but they always say if you drink when you're thirsty, you've left it too late, as he says as he grabs his bottle of water, right? So you should drink before you get those symptoms. For sleep, I mentioned earlier, if I have an early night, I won't. That's it. That's like the sword of Damocles. I'm in trouble. Sword of Damocles coming in there. There's no chance I'm going off. I've had an early night, and I'm sure that's psychological, but it is what it is. However, it's a bit like if I go to bed when I'm tired, for me, I'll sleep.
Yeah.
A doctor will say, or a specialist will say, create a great sleep environment and have a routine. Go to bed at the same time every night. That habitual thing you were talking about will kick in, and you'll have a much better sleep health that way. For me, that's never worked. The best advice I would give to someone who's genuinely suffered from serious chronic insomnia is go to bed when you're tired. Listen to your body in that respect. When you're tired is the optimal time. If you hit their head hits the pillow, your body will you'll have a less latency and you'll drop off. If you try and beat the system, try and beat what your body's telling you, certainly in my instance, I will try and beat it because I know sleep is good and I know I'm sleep deprived. That's when I can't beat my own internal system. It just says no. So I very rarely go to bed at the same time as my wife, but I'll go as soon as I feel tired because I don't want to fall asleep on the sofa because if I wake up, I won't get back down. Yeah. That's the trigger. Go straight to bed, go straight down, and I'm off.
You're probably not going to feel that. I actually agree with you. And I don't often go to bed at the same time each night. I
often don't agree with you.
I agree with you. I would agree, go to bed when you're tired. And what I would say is that most people are not putting themselves in the situation to do that. What do I mean? When I do a lot of my teaching, whether it's sleep or anything else, I'm always trying to go closer to nature. So what would it be like in nature? Now, in nature, we wouldn't, except for if you're in Estonia in the middle of July like I am, because it's light up until midnight. But usually it's dark. Now, I've got artificial lights on here because I know my mate's going to come in a second. He's just gone to buy some fireworks for the 4th of July. He wants to set off somewhere. But he's going to come in anyway. And so there's no point in me putting lights off and doing anything. And I might go out later anyway. But if I create an environment myself, like I'm staying at my sister's house and they've got their lights on, I'll find that at the time that I'm normally tired, I'm not going to be tired. Because for me, I'll be wired like I've had like 3 or 4 coffees. And so I won't feel that tired. And also what happens, people think, I've been tired all day. Then it comes to like 10 o'clock and then suddenly I'm wide awake. And that's the second wind, as sometimes people call it.
Yeah.
The second wind, the simplest way I explain it to people is what would normally have been happening is that energy, if you were asleep, is being used to heal your body. But because you're not asleep, your body's got energy that it's going to use up. So that's where your second wind comes from. But had you been asleep at that time, you would have been asleep and that energy would have been used for that. And so the reason I'm pushing back a little bit, not because I'm pushing back on you specifically as someone who's experienced insomnia for 30 years, I'm pushing back on all the other delegates and people that come to me, go, I've got all these sleep issues. And I think, well, what are you doing the 2 hours before bed? You've got every light on in the house. You're watching the news. You're doing all this. And you're telling your brain and your body it's daylight. You're telling your brain and your body that it needs to be stimulated. So I actually do sometimes I often watch TV, but I won't go on, say, social media or anything that requires almost two-way input or anything too stressful because it will wake the mind up. A nice little comedy movie, fine. But if you're not doing things in that hour or two before bed that is going to be conducive to you getting sleep, yes, you're going to feel awake. I actually do go to bed when I'm tired, and this is why one of the rules I have, which will be in the book, which hopefully will come out in a few months' time, called 9 after 9. So 9 is no in German. So 9 after 9, or some people like to say it's 9 for 90, no for 90. So 90 minutes before you go to bed, or you plan on going to bed, I start to chill things out. So I'll, dim the lights, have the blue light blockers on. And one thing I tend to do is I turn away the time. So up until I got my Oura ring, for years, I never knew what time I went to bed because I would do exactly what you say, which is go to bed when you're tired.
You're tired, yeah.
So I would turn things off at 9 because I said 9 after 9. And sometimes I might be going to bed at 10, but actually what I worked out when I did get my Oura ring much later, I was probably going to bed more like half 11, 12. So I was going to bed later. And so that's what I would say. So I do agree with you, right? Go to bed when you're tired, especially if you're an insomniac. And I would also put those conditions as the optimal as you can in your environment with who you're around and blah, blah, blah. So that in that 90 minutes, 2 hours before bed, you're telling your body it's like this. So if I took you camping, for example, and we went camping in the Lake District and we're away from natural lights and we were hiking all day. I remember when I did the Edinburgh Gold hike when I was 18, 19, we were getting up at like 4 or 5 in the morning and I was in bed by about 5 in the afternoon because it was quite dark as well. And we just slept. Then we got up at like 4 and did the rest of the hike. But you tend to, and there was a study I put in the book somewhere where they took a bunch of people to the desert somewhere and they took the mobile phones. I think it was in a different chapter of my book. I think it was to do with the digital technology chapter, but they were talking about how people had better conversations, they slept better and all of this. And you go into your natural melatonin cycle. So for example, one of the things that does affect my sleep massively, which I talked about last time, I think was eating late when I was on that holiday in Greece. And I'm not sure if I did or not, but it really affected my Oura ring scores because your body has different body clocks, like your liver, your kidney, all that. They shut off at different times and they get their receptors from light. One of the ways that we regulate our internal body clock is through light. The others are different ways. And so if you're constantly having light and blue light exposed and eating late and doing all this is what happened to me on Saturday, for example. Saturday, I arrived in Tallinn at midnight, came here, had to put the lights on because it was a new place and I was trying to unpack my stuff. Then before I knew it was like 1:30 and I was like, feel a bit energized, so I'll go for a walk. So I went for a walk and because I wasn't asleep, I was hungry. And I ended up going and getting, believe it or not, although it was a plant-based and I managed to get them to give me a gluten-free bun, Burger King, right?
Yeah, there you go.
3 o'clock in the morning. 3 o'clock in the morning, 24-hour Burger King up in town. And then I got back and I couldn't sleep because my body is not used to eating at 3 o'clock in the morning. It felt awake. So I ended up watching something I shouldn't watch before going to bed, new Apple show called Hijack. I didn't want to watch it before going on the plane.
It's good though, isn't it? It's good. It is good.
That plane hijacking. So I started
the first 2 episodes
before my flight and I thought, I'm not going to watch that before my flight. I'll watch it later. And the next thing I knew, you'd be proud of me. I went to bed at like 4:30 in the morning on.
I'm not proud. I'm not one of these people that champions it. I have nothing but respect and admiration and jealousy for my wife who goes to bed at an ordinary hour and goes straight to sleep. I don't know how she does it.
I do the things that most people do, right? Watch the news, keep the lights on, drink late into the evening, have coffees at 5 o'clock. I'm not going to sleep either. I'm not going to sleep.
There's an interesting point here, actually, that I want to raise. And I haven't really done any research on this. It just kind of popped into my head as you were talking. So I would admit, and you can see from the bags under my eyes, that I know when I have a good night's sleep, so I'm rubbing my eyes now, right, that I'm definitely chronically sleep deprived, probably. And my body has adapted and got used to it. Doesn't mean I don't need it. And I'm very happy to make that admission. What's interesting is my wife will go to bed at, I don't know, earlier than me. I wouldn't say probably normal times. She goes straight to sleep. I'll go to bed maybe 2 hours later, whatever time that might be. But I'll still wake earlier as well.
Mm.
So you would think, and that's a natural thing with no alarm set, you would think then on that basis that if I need it, your body would catch up. But it doesn't. And we're creatures of routine anyway. But if we both went, it doesn't matter. So I would argue in my instance with my wife that she just needs more sleep than me because her body doesn't naturally wake her up. Mine does. I'm up and out and done.
Because you're also very A-type, go-get. I mean, look, right, you have run 3 podcasts, you write your play, you've got a business, you're launching in another territory, you've got all of these things going on. So you're very excited. And this is what I tell people about the B model, right? You can find people who have got the energy and the passion and enthusiasm of a 5-year-old who sleep 3 hours a night and eat this and do that. And they've got more energy than anyone you know. That will last. But for how long is the question? And what are they?
All the science tells you lack of sleep encourages diabetes, cancer, premature death. I'm fully aware. My wife always says to me, you're going to die before me. And she's probably absolutely right.
Technically, men tend to die before the wives anyway.
Well, she's older than me, but maybe not. But I think what's interesting, though, I have to throw that back at her. But I just think it's interesting that irrespective of what time we go down, whether I need it or not, my body still says, right, time to get up, time to go. But I also, and I don't know if there's a connection. She never remembers her dreams. I remember all of mine, lucid. So I feel like I'm awake even earlier than that. This morning, I had the first ever dream, by the way, I've ever had. And I mentioned this because we talked about it in the small T trauma piece. Well, I don't like water because my mum always dreamt for years and years, chronic dreams she had every single year that I would drown. And she probably won't want to hear this.
Yeah.
But yesterday or this morning, literally this morning, I dreamt that I drowned before I woke up. And I died in my dream. which I haven't done in an awful long time. And I literally drowned. My dream was I jumped, there were loads of pools of water. I'll just explain it because this was a bit, and my first thought was my mum's not going to like this. I wasn't too freaked out by it. I'm assuming, I think there were dream tellers, and maybe there's a message in here somewhere that we'll yet to understand. Yeah. I can't remember watching anything related to it because usually it's your brain compartmentalizing memories that happened in the day or whatever. But the dream this morning, I always remember my dreams. And I'm definitely quite as I say, a lucid dream, and I remember them, and I love the stories, and I don't want to come out of them. And actually, believe it or not, you can train yourself to stay in them. If anyone else is a lucid dreamer and wants to dream more, there's a tip here. I'll go back. If you have 3 large glasses of water before you go to bed, your body will wake you up to go to the loo. But before you wake up, you'll hit that lucid dreaming phase. If you have 3 glasses of water, it's probably the magical thing if you want to have more lucid dreams. And if you write them down and keep a dream diary, again, that habitual piece is your brain gets used to being in that process, and you can dream.
You know Charlie Morley? He's speaking here at Mindvalley. You'd like it. He's the world expert on lucid dreaming. I've seen him speak.
Oh, good. I'd love that. That'd be great.
A Mindvalley quest.
Okay.
I'll forward on.
You're right up my street. But anyway, this morning, so pools of water. I have to say it because my mum's probably going to listen to this, and I'm not going to advertise it. And I saw there was a kid jumping off like a huge bridge into this water. And I was like, oh, what's below that? And there was another pool. And in this pool was like a really shallow, like a constricted cave. And he kind of jumped in. So I jumped in, and it was so thin, the cave, that as I went under, I went on as like a pencil dive, which is what the kid had done off this big bridge that was next to it. And I didn't know what was down there. So I took what I thought was the safe route and dived into this like hole into a cave. But it was thinner than I thought, and I went further than I thought. So I went down and basically got stuck. And because my arms were next to me in a pencil dive, I couldn't get them out, and I just got stuck in the cave. And no, I couldn't push my way up because I've thrown myself, jumped into it and got stuck, and I couldn't get out. And I remember looking up, and I literally just drowned in my dream and came out. Very strange. Probably, if I end up drowning in the next week or so, remember this moment, recorded it, and I'll go back to my mum.
I've been doing my daily swims here, so I actually did think of you this morning, I think, when I was in the pool. I don't know why, not in the pool, I was in the sea actually here. I don't know if it's the North Sea, but also something I wanted to say a while back, way back, about 20 minutes ago, where you were talking about that if you have one bad night, not to stress about it, but then when it becomes 4,
reframing, yeah.
But one of the things I read, you might have read this book, but I quite liked it. The main thing I took away from it, it's a very small book. I think it's called Sleep by Nick Littlehales or something. What he talks about is, rather than think about hours per night, and he uses this with a lot of athletes. He used to train Man United and Arsenal. And this helped with one of my other friends who is a bit of an insomniac as well. Think of cycles per week and how many cycles per week. So a cycle for typically for most people is, and I use this especially when I'm in things like Mindvalley, is typically 90 minutes. The average cycle is somewhere between 70 and 100 minutes, usually 90 minutes. For me, it's about a 90-minute cycle. That's when you go through the stages. Depends how you measure sleep, but generally there's 2 or 3 or 4 stages, depending on how you do it. There's non-REM, REM, and deep sleep. And then you've got the transition and awake and transition.
They cycle through it.
And the whole cycle takes about 90 minutes. And the portion of like dream sleep is bigger at the end of the night than the beginning, and deep sleep.
It's usually dreaming REM sleep, don't you? Dreaming REM.
Yeah, that's actually the reason why I find it hard to get up in the morning. Not because I'm tired, but because I really enjoy getting into the dream, and I want to go back to it. So I might go back for another 90-minute cycle to get an extra dream in. Anyway, he's talking about cycles. So you need, let's say, if I need 7.5 hours, that's, what's that, 5 cycles in a night? So 5 90-minute cycles. So let's say I only get 6 hours sleep. Then he actually advocates this, which I don't. Let's say your bedtime is 10:30, so you can get up at 6. That'll be 7 cycles. And you come home from the pub or your night out at 10:40. He will say, stay up till midnight and then go to bed and enter into that next cycle. Which might not be that hard at that time, but if you got home at 5 past midnight and you normally go to bed at say 10:30, there's no way I'm going to stay up till 1:30 just to get the cycles. And then you can add the cycles the next day and a 30-minute nap.
To be honest, I actually follow something like that. I can't remember if I've read the book or not. So for those listening, I used to have another business called Insomnia Store, which was all years ago when I was suffering. I felt like the advice given in those days, it may have improved, was really poor. And I was really passionate about discovering how I could create a better, basically a holistic solution to my own sleeplessness. And it evolved into baby sleep as well. I studied baby sleep, and I've read lots of books about sleep paralysis and different things. And I ended up becoming an advisory site for people that struggled. So, and this was going back 10 years. So my research is out of date and I can't remember all of it. But at the time, I was obviously having a very live and popular website helping people that were struggling with sleeplessness. And it's a really tricky thing. And it something that helped, and it may have been that book. I don't remember the name of the author, but I read a book that was similar. But even now, it's kind of held through. So if I am going to bed late, I will often move my alarm if I need to wake up at a specific time, or I want to wake up. I will measure it to the end of that sleep cycle. I base mine on 80 minutes. So I'll work out how many sleep cycles I can get. If I'm going to bed particularly late, I'll go, okay, this was later than I wanted to go. Maybe I play poker with my friends or whatever, and it's 2 a.m. I'll actually say to Lucy, I'm not going to get up until, and it'll be quite a specific time. It'll be something like, I don't know, 8:40, because I know that will give me a chance to finish off that last cycle and I'm done. Because the worst time, and often when people, we've talked about this before, when you're waking up and you're feeling really groggy every morning, even if you've had 8 or 9 hours, it could just be that your alarm is set in the middle of that deep sleep cycle and your body doesn't want to wake up from it. So you want to try and work out when your cycles, how long your cycles are, and things like Oura rings can help with that. But also when you're going to wake up, because if you can wake up at the end of an REM cycle, actually you can have maybe only have 2 or 3 cycles of sleep, but you can feel really refreshed because it's a natural point of waking up. You don't want your alarm set at a time when you're in deep sleep, which is why when we had a previous episode, I said sometimes moving your alarm forward can actually, and having less sleep can actually make you feel way more energized than moving it back or pressing snooze, because you're preventing yourself from going into the deeper sleep cycle. But actually, I just thought eventually it's interesting.
Well, this is also one of the bugbears I've got with the Oura ring. I love the Oura ring, but I have mentioned this to them before, and I presume they don't do it because of battery life and it will be re-engineering. But they're missing a massive trick. They should have haptic feedback on the ring that then wakes you up when you're in your lightest sleep. At the time
100%.
that you want. And I don't understand why they're not doing that, other than the fact it might drain battery life and add a whole new level of complexity to have a vibrating rechargeable battery in there. Because that for me is an obvious one for having it on your finger, because it doesn't wake your partner up, and it's as accurate as it can possibly be compared to some of the other ones that do this. I think there's a way that there's apps that do it, but they do it through your breathing and the turning, and it's not very accurate. So I think they need to do that, because I don't really judge it by that. I tend to wake up when I want to wake up, unless I've got an appointment, in which case, maybe at 6 a.m. But also not to give you too much information, I was saying to my mate this morning, my bowel movements are very regular ever since I've changed a lot of my sleep pattern and diet and everything. So I know like 6 a.m. bowel movements are going to start, and it's almost like my internal alarm clock a lot of the time.
Well, I think something which I know you read this, and I told you I'm reading the oxygen advantage at the minute. Fascinating. And I'm hoping that might help with my sleep. I'm wondering if I overbreathe, and most of us are chronic overbreathers, and I'm hoping to try and follow some of those techniques and getting my Bolt score and seeing if I can work out if my breathing can improve my.
Are you going to try taping overnight? Because I did that for probably about a year. Have you got to that bit in the book?
I haven't yet. So, but maybe we'll have a separate episode on when I finish the book. We'll have a chat about either the book or about breathing. I know you're really passionate about
breathing. But mouth taping is a good one. I've been trying to get my mate to do it because his wife really moans at me about the guy snoring, and that's one way to get rid of the snoring. And you just put a tiny little bit of tape across your mouth, like the size of your fingernail. Yeah. And it's just not stopping your mouth from opening if you need to in an emergency, but subconsciously it's there. And when I do that, I tend to be a nose breather anyway overnight now because of changes I've made. But you wake up with more energy because you're not breathing through your mouth. You're not as dehydrated when you wake up because you don't lose water.
I think I am a nose breather anyway. I thought I
was. And then when you take it, I was waking up at points in the night going, and it's only after about a month or two of practice that I then didn't.
So I think I'm a nose breather, but then my wife will often say that you're catching flies, which suggests to me I'm not that. Mouth wide open. So I'll have to find out. Yeah. Anyway, it's been good. It's been good chat. It's been good today. Talk about sleep. I know you've got Mindvalley to get to, and you're 2 hours ahead of me. So,
I'm not going to do much tonight. I don't think. My mate still hasn't turned up with the fireworks, so God knows whether he found them. He said, "I'll be back in half an hour." That was an hour and a half ago, and I've still got his left. I made him a stir fry here with the stuff I've got. Nice. Still there. So
I suspect we've probably got more to explore on the sleep chat. I think it'd be good to get into the brain waves and a bit more of your book stuff as well that you've been researching. So. Let's tackle this again. I think.
Yeah, it's a big topic. Good. Yeah, big topic for 1 hour. It's not.
You can never cover it in an hour. There's loads we can get to. There's certainly loads that I'd like to talk about in terms of what I used to talk. When I had the Insomnia site going and some of the not my ailments, but actually you might be able to help others with other types of sleeplessness they're struggling with, and may have some advice for those. And I'll try and dig out some of the inquiries I used to get, and some of the things that are out there for helping people. But so, as you say, we're very conscious about other things that we do, like being hydrated or eating our food. But often we don't think about the two other things we really need. One of those, of course, is the way that we breathe. I mean, we don't breathe, we die, right? And if we don't sleep, we're in big trouble as well. And they're 4 things that really are central to our well-being. And I think food and we talked about nutrition briefly before, hydration being another we're definitely going to tackle. But actually, sleep has a huge part to play in our overall well-being as well. And by the way, please don't think I'm dismissive in anything that you've said. I think it's such an individual thing. I'm very open to trying. Hence, I'm reading this book.
It is hard when you've lived with something for a long time, especially when people are coming from it who maybe haven't lived that experience, which is always, I mean, no one has ever lived anyone else's experience, generally speaking, because we're all unique.
But I've also got a non-evasive solution, and I know it's a drug-based solution, but it's really non-evasive. I take very, very, very rarely. So I'll get prescribed, now they've reduced it, but say 8 weeks supply, and that'll last me 6 months. So, it's just, for me, that's why I know it's a psychological problem, because if I don't have it, I struggle. And when I have it, I don't. So it's, I know it's all in my mind. And
if you've been in that session today with the session he was talking about, Paul McKenna was, I Can Make You Rich, but it wasn't that necessarily money. But I would love to see you on stage from like, say, someone like a Paul McKenna or someone like that, and seeing if they can do some jiggery pokery, because it is a mental thing. And you're trying to, it's a subconscious thing that you're trying to consciously correct, whereas you need to
correct
consciously.
I get it. Well, let's definitely come back to this. I think it's interesting, and hopefully it's interesting for our listeners as well. But Hari, you've got we're gonna have loads to talk about at the end of your Mindvalley University. So let's catch up next week and find out what you've been learning. I mean, I would love to.
Well, this is the first of 3 weeks, so I'll still be here. So I'm here till the end of July. Crazy.
Amazing. Is that on for 3 weeks? Is it? Fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow.
There we go.
Because of the work that you do, this is all tax deductible.
Exactly. There we go.
Yeah. Happy days. All right, guys. Well, it's really good to see you. Enjoy the fireworks whenever they come back. All right, Hari. Catch you soon, mate. Take care. Cheers, man. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to the Mindful Past podcast with Nick Day and Hari Kalymnios.
We hope you found our discussion insightful and gained valuable takeaways to support you on your journey.
Please do leave us a review on your preferred podcast platform and share an episode that's resonated with you with a friend or a family member who you think may also find it valuable.
Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast to ensure you never miss a future episode.
In the meantime,
we'll continue exploring mindful path topics to provide you with more insights and ideas to support your personal growth.
For now, thank you for your support, and we look forward to bringing you the next episode of the Mindful Path podcast real soon.